Matt Armstrong had come a long way from riding BMX bikes and tinkering with cars in his spare time. Over the past 6 years, his life had changed dramatically, quitting his full-time job, building salvage cars, buying his first unit, giving away cars, purchasing his dream vehicle, and eventually moving into his dream house back home in the UK. His audience had watched every step of that journey. But this next chapter was something none of them, including Matt, had seen coming. It started as many things do in Matt's life, with a friendship. Several years earlier, at a car show in the UK, Matt had met Tavarish, better known as Freddie, a well-known American automotive YouTuber based in Florida. Freddie had made a casual offer. If Matt ever wanted to build a car in the US, he was welcome to use his shop and stay at his house. Matt took him up on it. What followed were multiple trips back and forth between the UK and the US, hauling parts across the Atlantic to build a purple Porsche GT3. By the end of that build, the car had become too expensive to import back home, so Matt sold it to Freddie at cost, a gesture of gratitude for everything Freddie had done. But the trips didn't stop there. Matt kept returning to Florida for new builds, new projects, and new friendships. Each time, he stayed at Freddie's house and used Freddie's workshop. Florida, slowly but surely, had started to feel like a second home. Then came the phone call that changed everything.
All I'm gonna say is, start getting your flights, mate.
I'm ready. I'll bring the toolbox.
The job was rebuilding a Bugatti Chiron, not exactly a weekend project. Matt and his team flew out to Miami, knowing this time they might be there for a while. Hotels were expensive, and the trips were becoming more frequent. Matt's father had always told him that money is safest in property. With that advice in mind, Matt made a decision. It was time to stop staying in hotels and start looking for a house of his own in Florida. The problem was, Matt had no idea where to begin. He didn't know the areas, the process, or the going rates. So he enlisted the help of a local realtor named Alfredo, whose job it was to find suitable properties, handle the negotiations, and guide Matt through the American buying process, which works differently from the UK. In the US, both the buyer and seller have their own realtors, and both take their commission from the final sale price. Alfredo lined up 4 properties for Matt to view. The first was a 2-bedroom condo in Coral Gables, a well-regarded neighborhood in Miami. Priced at $1.1 million, it offered a walkable location close to shops, restaurants, and bars, with the airport just 10 minutes away. The building included a shared gym and swimming pool, but these came at an additional monthly cost known as HOA, Homeowners Association fees, which in this case amounted to $1,100 per month. That fee did cover the building's exterior insurance, including hurricane damage, which is a real consideration in South Florida. The place was modern and well-presented, but with only 2 bedrooms and no workspace for cars, it already felt like a compromise. The second property was another condo, this time right in the heart of Miami, listed at $1.17 million. It had 2 bedrooms plus a small den that could serve as a third sleeping space, and the views were extraordinary, floor-to-ceiling windows looking out across the water, with sightlines stretching all the way to Fort Lauderdale. The building's amenities were exceptional: 5 swimming pools including a rooftop pool, a gym, a spa, a golf simulator, basketball and tennis courts, and a daycare facility. 2 parking spaces were included. But the HOA fees here were $2,700 per month, a significant ongoing cost on top of the purchase price. And like the first condo, there was nowhere to work on cars. The third property shifted the search entirely. Located about an hour outside of Miami, it was a 5-bedroom house priced at $979,000, cheaper than both condos and dramatically more spacious. There were 4 full bathrooms and 1 half bath, a modern interior that needed no work, a large family kitchen, and a triple garage big enough to work on a car, though not quite large enough to fit a 2-post lift. The outdoor space was generous enough to eventually build a proper workshop. There was no HOA fee, though homeowners in Florida do face significant standalone insurance costs. The location was the main drawback. An hour from Miami is a meaningful commute when the work is happening in the city. The fourth and final property was the most characterful of the lot. Set on just under an acre of land, it had a long private driveway, a wraparound porch, an outdoor kitchen and bar, and, Crucially, its own private pool. The garden was vast, with a banana tree and enough space to build a substantial workshop. Inside, it had 5 bedrooms arranged across a traditional layout, though some areas needed modernizing, which also meant there was room to negotiate on the asking price of $1.15 million. A small annex at the front of the property added an extra bedroom. It felt the most like a proper home. The downside was that it sat even further from Miami than the third property, roughly an hour's drive, and like the others, it lacked a ready-made workshop. None of the 4 properties ticked every box. But rather than settle, Matt mentioned his wish list to Alfredo: the space of the outer houses, the character of the last one, the proximity of the central condos, and above all, a proper workshop on site. Alfredo went back to work, and he found one more property that hadn't been on the original list. That was the one Matt bought, at a price lower than anything else he'd viewed. When Matt returned to Miami to take ownership, he brought his family with him. His father, who had never imagined his son would one day buy a house in America, was visibly stunned. The team collected the keys, loaded a hired truck with suitcases and Bugatti parts, and drove to the new house for the first time as its owners. The property itself was a 5-bedroom home with a private pool and a large detached workshop in the back garden, the feature that had ultimately sealed the deal. But the workshop needed work before any cars could go in it. It was split into 2 separate spaces divided by a wall, with one side serving as a garage and the other set up as a man cave, complete with a pool table, bar area, and storage. Matt's plan was to knock the dividing wall down and combine the 2 spaces into one large workshop. The renovation moved quickly. A 2-post car lift was the first thing installed, even before much of the furniture arrived in the house. Then the wall came down, opening up a workshop large enough to fit a few cars. From there, the team from Garage Star, a specialist workshop flooring company with both UK and US operations, came in to completely redo the floor. The existing tiles were ripped out, the concrete was sanded flat, cracks were filled, and a full epoxy floor was laid in a neutral, Miami-influenced design. The result was a surface that looked more like a showroom than a garage. With the floor done, the walls were boarded, primed, and painted gray, a deliberate choice after Matt had found that white walls at his UK workshop showed dirt far too quickly. Electricians sorted the wiring and sockets throughout. Hexagonal LED lights, the same style used in Matt's previous build with Black Horse Performance, were assembled and mounted on the walls to provide strong, even lighting beneath cars when they're lifted on the ramp. Inside the house, the team made their way through what felt like an entire IKEA warehouse to furnish rooms that had been completely stripped bare by the previous owners, who had even refused to sell the furniture when asked. Sofas, beds, coffee tables, kitchen essentials, and everything in between were sourced, transported, assembled, and put into place. What had been an empty shell slowly became livable. The finished setup was exactly what Matt had been looking for. The house had 5 bedrooms, multiple bathrooms, a large living space, an outdoor seating area, and the pool. The workshop, newly renovated and fully kitted out, sat at the back of the property, flood-lit, epoxy-floored, and ready for whatever came next, which, given the half-finished Bugatti Chiron sitting nearby, would not be long. Matt had taken another leap, this one larger than most. A house in Miami, over 4,500 miles from home, bought in a country he'd first dreamed about as a kid watching BMX videos filmed at American skate parks. He'd followed that curiosity across an ocean, turned it into a career, and now had a base on the other side of the world to keep building from. As he put it himself, there is no right moment. You take the risk, you take the step, and you follow where it leads.